Hi, I'm Damien and this is Enneagram Life, and today I want to talk to you guys about Enneagram Type 2. I want to give you a general overview. So, Enneagram Type 2 is a shame type. Now, I just want to quickly explain, because some people think that when they hear the term shame, they think that that means humble. So they think the shame types are like humble people, and that's the complete opposite. The shame types, the 2, the 3, and the 4, are very much prideful people. So they're called the shame types just because that's a quirk of the English language applied to the Enneagram. They could easily have been called the pride type, because pride and shame, in the sense that the Enneagram means it, are the same emotion. They're just opposite sides of the same coin. Pride and shame. So I like to think of them as the pride types. But it's all about whether you define someone by the positive space or the negative space. Anyway, I just mention that because some people who I teach the Enneagram to do assume that it means they're humble. So the type 2 as a shame type is often called the helper. The other shame types, they process shame or pride. The other pride types, the other shame types, pride types, same thing. They process it differently. And one of the ways the 2 processes it is this concept of helping. And it's often they're called the helper, the type 2. And it's a very good explanation of what the type 2 is about. It's a very good summary of how they normally behave. They look for ways to help people, and they're often seen as helping people. And they, in themselves, they have this concept, this function of how they interact within society and among individuals. This concept of, if I help this person out now, they'll help me in the future. So that's the concept that they have of how they interact with people and what they want to get from people. And it's very much a matter of getting. It's I will help you for the sake of being able to get something from you in the future. It's about influencing. The help they give is to influence. It's to create a relationship where they can hope to gain something for themselves. So it's not like a freely given help, and that's very important to understand the type 2's concept and mental processing and motivations. Now, it goes into explaining why they can become resentful of people if they don't get back, and how they often have a feeling of being owed by people. And it all kind of relates to a concept of the world in terms of having a place within a group or society. Yeah. And that relates, there's words that relate to that, like hierarchies. They're very hierarchical thinking. They very much love to have powerful people, or people they see as powerful, owing them favors, or at least in their mind owing them favors. And so all of that sort of stuff describes the type 2, and there's a lot of information about that, and it's the most common explanation of who the type 2s are is all about that, being a helper, trying to gain influence, wanting to impress powerful people, wanting to create relationships with powerful people. And all of that's completely right, but it's very much observational, like this is what the type 2 does. It doesn't really describe how the type 2 feels. It's a part of how they feel, but I don't think it describes very well what it feels like, very completely what it feels like to be a type 2. And so I often look at each of the different types and I ask myself, how do they feel? And the type 5, for example, feels very overwhelmed generally. And the type 8 feels very angry generally. Now, the type 2, I can't think of a single word that describes how they feel. There's a few words that come close, but they can be misinterpreted. So I don't have a specific word that I just want to give you immediately. Instead, I conceptualize how it feels to be a type 2 with a concept of a spectrum. So they are either at one end of this spectrum, or they could be at any point in this spectrum, but commonly they're at one of the extremes of this spectrum, or moving fast towards one of the extremes. But they can be anywhere on the spectrum. They just generally are at one of the extremes quite often. Anyway, this is the spectrum that they're on. And on this spectrum, you have, at one end, you have this feeling of something like when you walk into a new sports club, a new sports team, you join a new sports team, and or you start a new job. That feeling when you walk in the door of this new job and you don't even know where to stand, that feeling, it goes right down into your stomach, and it's like this, it's this butterflies in your stomach feeling, and it's very intense. And I'm sure everyone's felt that in some way. And then on the other ends of the spectrum is that feeling when you walk into, or you're about to walk into a group, a gathering of some kind, where you feel really completely accepted, completely like you belong there, that you're one of them. Like maybe, and you know, you walk in and someone's like, hey, Jono's here. And someone in the background, Jono's here. And you can feel the excitement in their voice and everyone's happy to see you. And, you know, often people get that feeling maybe if they meet up with their family once a week and they're really looking forward to seeing everyone, and they know how it's going to go down and they're going to be fully accepted. And that is, or it might be like if you have a group of friends and you've been playing Dungeons and Dragons, some sort of a role-playing game with them for years, and then maybe you play it once a month, and then you walk in that door and everyone's happy to see you, and you know you've been doing it for years, and everyone's like, hey, slap you on the back type thing. So that is the complete opposite of this extreme feeling of that, joining that new club, that sports team, or starting that new job and not knowing where to stand, and no one in the sports club really knows you yet, and then everyone has to partner up. Maybe it's like a kickboxing club and everyone has to partner up so they have someone to practice their kicks with, and everyone knows who they normally partner up with, and they all partner up together, and you're left there alone. Like that feeling. And so that's just an example, like the sports club. But, you know, it can happen anywhere. It could just be like, it could be just walking into an unfamiliar restaurant. But this feeling is at one end of the spectrum, and then this feeling where everyone is like, hey, that is at the other end. And so, that's the spectrum, which I think really shows how, or is a good way to model how the type 2 feels. They feel they're somewhere on this spectrum and often at one extreme. Anyways, so the type 2 often moves towards the seeming like they move towards the negative elements of the type 8 at times of stress. And that's all about becoming aggressive, being angry, and it's usually caused by feelings of your place. Like if they feel that their place is threatened, within a society or a hierarchy, they can become very aggressive and angry, and they can be very sort of, personal attacks, character assassination, that type of thing, and that all through that very angry, through the emotion of anger. So yeah, they seem like a type 8 then. And then at times of growth, when they're moving towards their best, they're more like the positive aspects of a type 4, which is all about being an individual. And, all that stuff about your position in a group or a society, which is such a big part of the type 2. That's all about like being a cog in the machine, like having a place, having a purpose or a function within a particular machine. But being an individual, that's like a total opposite. That's when they're not tied down by all of that, where do I fit in this society? Who am I connected to? Who are my allies? Who are my enemies? When they're outside of all of that stuff, which is very common among the type 2s, and they move beyond that into a place of growth, it's more about, I'm an individual. I want to express myself for who I am, not for who I'm connected to. I want to express myself for me and be more interested in artistic things and self-expression. So, I hope you liked this. Please leave a comment below, press the like button. Please subscribe.